track as cars are being released from the grid here from Road America. Let's take a look at your starting lineup. Starting in the 35th position, Aurora Strauss in the number 17 machine. The next row is the 164 of Ramon Pinheiro and the 65 of Dave Tweedley. The next row is the 71 of Ben Jacobs and Clint Field in the 73. Andrew Marks in the 14 on the inside of the next row. Jim Booth on the outside. Jason Greenwood in the 529 and Chris Kemp in the 153. In the next row, it is Richard Durscher in the 29 and David Albin in the 349. The next row forward is the 77 of Mark Allen, Mike D'Ambrosi in the number 6. We'll start 23rd. Starting in 22nd, the 99 of Kent Myers and the 7 of Puis Engenman and the number 1 of Mike Enzaldi and Austin Riley in the 20. We'll start 19th. In the 18th starting position, the 55 of Robert Cipriani and the 21 of Jack Yang will start 17th. Reed Stewart in the 27 starts 16th. Starting 15th, the 57 of David Flint. Alan Dursey will start on the outside of row 7 in the 09. On the inside, Thomas Palladino in the 913. Scott Wagner in the 8 will start P12. Starting in 11th, Gustavo Raffles in the 28. On the outside of row 5 is the 32 of Palmer Miller. Reese Everard, who ran a great race yesterday in the 1500. The number 61 will start P9. Starting in 8th on the outside of row 4 is the 00 of Nate Smith. Klaus Nielsen in the number 41 will start alongside. The next row forward is Robert Rossi in the 611. Judd Miller in the 64 will start in 5th. Starting on the outside of row 2 is the 111 of Louis Schreiber, and Indy Al Miller in the 500 will start on the inside of row 2. And on the front row, the 37 of John Field and the 68 of Steve Jenks, your pole sitter here in the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America Sanzio Grand Prix, race number 2 of 3. We get to do this again tomorrow after the IndyCar race as well. So race 3 at the conclusion of the Sanzio Grand Prix tomorrow afternoon. But we've got to get this one done. 35 minutes the race distance. We bring in Tom Drewer. Tom, we saw a great race yesterday. Much different track conditions today. Obviously, a little bit of a dampness in the air. We seem to have one of these races where it's a little hairy at the start because of track conditions, but it usually ends up being one of the more spectacular races of the season.
It does always seem to happen here at Road America for whatever reason for the Blue Marble Radical Cup. But a driver's worst nightmare, and certainly that of the crews as well, to be sitting on the grid with precipitation falling around you, the slick tyres on the cars, and that's why the race director has elected for 2 pace laps. So we won't see the green first time by, 2 pace laps. And if in doubt, and if the skies do open up a little more than they are at the moment, I'm sure what we'll see is a full course caution, followed by a red flag, and then all the cars will trundle into pit lane, will calmly change tyres onto the wets, and then resume racing. So quite a long window for us to get this race done, about 50 minutes. Of course, we're going for a 35-minute race, as you mentioned, and hopefully we can get these 2 pace laps done and get underway.
Well, Judd Miller has just pulled that 64 machine off to the side of the road, and that's what's caused a bottleneck here on the first of 2 pace laps. So the race clock will start when they get to the start-finish line with the safety car, but the whole field is strung out quite considerably. In the 64, Judd Miller looks like he's trying to restart that car over in turn 8, had lost power on the exit of 7, and held up the entire field in hurry downs.
Judd has had a tough weekend so far, and an axle failed yesterday. Not quite a rare failure. Indeed, there was a lack of grease, if you will, in that axle assembly, and unfortunately, it seems like another issue has struck that car. But really tough for Judd Miller, a great competitor from Texas. S's Racing, a fantastic outfit, and it just seems like there's a bit of a dark cloud, if you will, that's hanging over that team, more so than looming over this circuit at the moment. And hopefully we'll see this car cleared out the way so that this race can get underway quickly. Now, you mentioned that Steve Jenks is on the pole. A fantastic race from him yesterday. Of course, Indy Al Miller took the win in the Platinum class and overall. Steve Jenks, however, in the 68, fastest in the race. And it is lap times that sets the grid as we go through the weekend. So race 1 lap time, setting the grid for this one. And then, of course, the fastest laps in this race will set the grid for the final race tomorrow. So it's not just about getting track position. You've got to put in a burner as well and try and get up the grid for the subsequent race. John Field, Sunoco Hard Charger, he will start alongside Steve Jenks and certainly charged hard from the back of the grid to 4th. Outright, he was on the tail of Louis Schreiber and nearly said if he'd had a couple more green flag laps right at the end of yesterday's race, he was on for a podium. John Field, always exciting to watch, and I suspect he'll be extremely quick in these trying conditions.
There's something to be said for experience here at Road America, and John certainly has that.
Absolutely, and confidence as well. Obviously, very high-speed corners when you think of turn 1, turn 3, etc. And if you've got the confidence to sort of send it into those corners, really, really sail some speed through them, and particularly in these conditions, we could see that on the opening lap as drivers try and find themselves, find their feet, if you will, underneath them. That some people are a little more confident on the loud pedal than others, and by the same token, more tentative in the braking zones than others. So look out for an interesting lap 1 once we go green.
Well, right now it's fairly dry, and I think the track has got enough temperature in it to stay that way, unless we really start to get to, a downpour like we saw maybe an hour or so ago. But if we do happen to get mixed conditions somewhere, that's where the 1340s may kind of come into play a little bit less horsepower, a little bit more stable under mixed conditions, perhaps.
Absolutely. The wild SR10s are certainly just that, with 430 brake horsepower, 380 foot-pound of torque. That's going to be much harder to deal with around a slippery circuit than the relatively low-powered, and I say relatively low-powered because still extremely quick machines, the SR3 1340s. But I think a varied field in terms of the skill level. Number of drivers coming into this series this year haven't got a lot of laps in radicals under their belt, maybe not even having a lot of laps of racing under their belt. Certainly some impressive drivers coming into this season, and one of them was outstanding yesterday, won the race in Pro 1500, and that was Reese Everett in the 61. Look out for a great battle again between himself, Nate Smith in the 00 machine, Palmer Miller in the 32, and the 28, our reigning champion of Gustavo Raffles. That will be a spectacular battle, and those cars are in the thick of it, if you will, this time, because they are lining up on the 4th, 5th, and 6th row of the grid amongst some of those SR10s. So it does look like the lights are out on the safety car, and the guys need to get a hustle on here and form up. I must admit, it was beautiful watching the Road to Indy guys come to the line, absolutely picture-perfect side-by-side. Hopefully we'll get a similar scenario here with the Blue Marble Radical Cup, and as I say that, they are indeed forming up quite nicely.
And the pace car will go lights out. Will make the right-hand turn at turn 14 and then dive to the Chevrolet pit lane here at Road America on the Salzio Grand Prix weekend, part of the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America. Race 2 of 3 on the weekend, race fans. 35 minutes. It's going to be a wild one, and it's going to be green flag as we come across the top of the hill.
So here we go. All the cars lining up side by side. Nice formation, pretty tight. Those front 2 rows. And it's green, green, green here at Road America. A great jump by Steve Jenks in that white machine. The 68 getting a fantastic start there as they head down into turn 1.
And we've got a slow car on the front straightaway having a problem getting up through the gears, but Jenks has got the early lead by about 2 car lengths, working across the Aaron's Tunnel down into turn 3. John Field under some pressure from Indy Al Miller and Louis Schreiber.
Absolutely. So, and plenty of side-by-side action further back in the pack as well. David Albin there doing a nice pass into turn 3. And it looks like a little bit of a tussle as they come out under the Sargentino Bridge. We'll see how they go down into turn 5.
Into turn 5, your leaders. Second and third kind of final. Little hip check from Indy Al Miller to the inside of John Field up the hill underneath the Corvette Bridge. That gives the 68 of Steve Jenks just a few moments to catch his breath with a little bit less pressure from behind. Separated by a car length and a half.
There's
Field locked up the
smoke.
brakes.
Yeah,
looks like Field locked up the brakes with a little bit of moisture
slow
there.
car as well at the back of the second pack, or the start of the second pack, should I say.
That looks like Indy Al Miller with a problem on the right front, perhaps.
Yeah, cut tire or something. Certainly some body work, rubbing on a Hankook tire. There is someone gets pushed out wide. And that's probably the battle for the lead of the 1500 class. So excellent racing and tough racing out there for race 2 of the Blue Marble Radical Cup.
Through the kink now.
So plume of smoke yet again from that third place car. And Indy Al Miller, it looks, whether it's coming from the front right or the right rear, who knows? But so far, it doesn't seem to be an issue for Indy Al. Of course, he'll be hoping that none of the officials think too much of that, and he can keep going around this racetrack. But he's got to last 35 minutes, and we've certainly seen tyres cut down before in much less time than that.
A little bit of a brake lock up from Steve Jenks, but Jenks starting to gap a little bit here along the Road America straight underneath the Salcio Bridge and at the Starters Bridge ahead of John Field, Indy Al Miller, Louis Schreiber, Robert Rossi, Klaus Nielsen, Nate Smith, Reese Everard in that 61. Reports of possible contact for the 61 of Everard.
Right, and it's the 32 of Palmer Miller who appears to lead the 1500 class at the moment. So Miller with an outstanding opening lap to get ahead of Reese Everard. And yesterday, Palmer Miller could only sort of manage 4th fastest on the racetrack and track position. So this time, he's done the business on the opening lap, and looking really racy is young Palmer Miller.
Steve Jenks continues to lead overall here, working lap number 3 here of the Blue Marble Radical Cup, race 2 of 3.
And it looks as though the 111 of Louis Schreiber has got past Indy Al Miller, but Indy Al goes for the switchback into turn 6. That's what he tried yesterday with Steve Jenks, and it worked that time. This time, no luck at all, as Schreiber cuts across the front of the 500 machine, closes the door, says, no thank you, I'll retain that 3rd place position.
And it looked like Indy Al Miller was trying to make a little bit of an aggressive move back to the outside to try to get the crossover into turn 7. But Louis Schreiber shutting the door, and now to turn 8, Schreiber starting to pull away a bit.
Yeah, and Palmer Miller with a really great lead. We'll have to pick up who's in second place still in the Pro 1500s. It looks like something has happened to Reese Everard. Certainly he's not the second car in that train. Perhaps an out of
Reese
place.
had made some contact on that opening lap and did possibly have a little bit of front nose damage, so we'll keep an eye on that.
That might be, I think it is the Klaus Nielsen car, the 41. So the Platinum class car holding up the front runners of Pro 1500, boxing the Reese Everard's car in, and that will give Palmer Miller a bit of a break, whilst creating an opportunity for the likes of Elaine Dursey, and for that matter, some of the other races in the 1500 class. So the front of the field streaking out here along that straightaway, and it's amazing the speed of these SR10 machines. And you can see the difference between that and the Pro 1500s. So definitely damage on the front of the 61 machine of Reese Everard.
And that is Clintfield in the 73 that's now gotten around Reese Everard.
Yeah, a huge chunk of front nose missing on the 61 machine. That won't be helping things at all. It'll be hurting him down the straight and indeed through the corners. Drama for yesterday's race winner in Pro 1500.
Reed Stewart leading in 1340 right now in that 27 machine.
So drama for one Group A driver. Fantastic track position for both the other teammates. And Steve Jenks out in the lead in Platinum. His fellow Group A Racing Radical New York driver, Reed Stewart, doing the business in Pro 1340. And has managed to eclipse Mike Anzaldi in the number one machine early on. As we've got a spin. And that's Anzaldi, the number one car, the reigning champion in Pro 1340 from second position.
Second in place.
Gets back on track. Luckily, there was a break in the traffic there.
It was due to contact from what race control is reporting. Not sure who they made contact with, but I would assume that could be a battle with Reed Stewart.
Well, the trouble is, of course, that there's multi-class racing and there's strengths and weaknesses. You mentioned before that perhaps in these trying conditions, the 1340 would be a little bit more of a stable platform. And certainly a good mix of cars in that top 10 from 1500s, platinum class cars. And then as we go down through the 10 through 20, a real mix of cars too.
We are missing Indy Al Miller, and Miller has gone around in 11 but continued. Did make some contact with the wall, but did get back underway. So Indy Al Miller with some problems on the backside of the race course on this Saturday afternoon.
I just wonder whether we're seeing some precipitation around the racetrack somewhere. It's odd for Indy Al Miller to make a mistake like that.
He did have a body rub. Possible could have a tire going down, something like that, and I believe that is him coming to pit lane perhaps. On pit lane, that would make sense if that tire finally cut down after rubbing, after contact on the opening circuit.
Huge ramifications for the championship. Indy Al Miller had a tough weekend at Barber. Didn't put a clean run together. The competition has been extremely strong in Platinum. And while some of his fellow competitors came away with wins and second places, Indy Al Miller was not so fortunate. And this is yet another drama-filled weekend for him, and not what he wanted to see after yesterday's race win.
So that certainly shakes things up. John Field did go purple last time through at 208.857, so there's definitely some heat in the racetrack with these slick tires here in the Radical Cup.
Yeah, and a pretty neat lap time. Not quite what we saw yesterday, but certainly some pace, as you say. So only personal drama, if you will, for some of the reigning champions. And speaking of reigning champions, where is Gustavo Raffles? I can't see him on the timing screen in the top 13 anyway. He has certainly fallen down the order. So what has happened?
I wonder if Gustavo Raffles had a problem and had to pull off. I wonder if that is one of the cars that had made contact possibly with Reese Everard.
That would make sense. Certainly they've been in a position to be fighting each other all weekend long. Very similar pace, those young guns. Reese has had the edge, and Raffles possibly looking just to capitalize on those opening laps and get ahead of what I think will be his arch rival for the season. But that would be, again, a big drama for the 1500 championship, as a great move by Nate Smith in the gold and black 0-0 car down into Canada corner.
Alan Dursey has had problems on the race course and has slowed in turn 13, is coming to a very crawl on the exit of 13 into the entry to 14. That is the 09 of Alan Dursey, running 9th overall.
Yeah, and he's pulling off. So Dursey with terminal problems. The good thing is he is on the inside of the racetrack and in a pretty nice position, to be honest. If you're Todd Snyder up in race control, I don't think that will cause any drama other than perhaps a local yellow for a lap or two.
I do see some sprinkles beginning in the turn 8 area on camera, so it's possible that there could be some moisture forthcoming in the carousel and the backside of the race course now.
This is tough conditions for the guys. Of course, when you start to see those droplets, and you can see it again on camera there, but you start to see the droplets on the visor and just start wondering, second-guessing how much grip you're going to have the next time you go into Canada corner. You can again see droplets of rain on the monitors. So poor old Steve Jenks is first in line. He's the first guy that gets to experience these conditions, and looks what's happened. The 37, John Fields, all over the back of Jenks as Jenks tries to find some grip, tries to work out what he's got to play with, and John Fields says, I'm going to go around the outside. Unbelievable.
But there is a yellow flag in 14. That pass initiated under a local yellow.
Wow. So John Field will have to relinquish this position. Otherwise, he's going to get a drive-through penalty. And I can hear race control noting that pass on the 68. So John Field being told, certainly his team being told by race control, to give that place back. I just wonder, Jenks is a wily old fox. I just wonder whether he lifted off knowing that there was a yellow there, perhaps thinking that he could get a good rocket out of that final corner.
Alan Jersey's made his way to pit lane, it appears.
So Jenks is getting let through, back into turn 5, and just about having a hip check with John Field, who's immediately back on the gearbox of the 68 machine. And already, again, looking racy. John Field certainly looks a little more comfortable on this racetrack at the moment.
Well, John Field has a lot of experience in mixed conditions with slick tires, no doubt. Also, much larger cars with much heavier, wheelbase, much longer wheelbase, much heavier automobiles. Certainly in the
wider tires, bigger downforce, and again, John Field around the outside of the carousel. What a move!
In the wet.
In the wet. What a move by John Field. We always expect him to go for it. But again, he's done it. He's the master around this racetrack. Last year, it was into turn 1. He was so impressive under brakes. And this time, the carousel. It seems it doesn't matter which corner it is around Road America. John Field's going to have a go.
So Field is your leader here with the mixed conditions continuing to fall. Surface flags popping up throughout the course now. So these drivers are fully aware that the surface has changed condition as we continue to work through race 2 here in the Radical Cup. We've got about 17 and a half minutes down, 17 and a half minutes to go. We are halfway through our 35-minute race 2.
And, Robert Rossi just running a little bit wide there, I think. The big question now is whether we do see a full course caution as a position change again. So that is Nate Smith coming through under the Speedville Bridge. Smith
we
pretty
could maybe
racing.
try to find Palmer Miller in the 32 as well. He is currently leading Pro 1500, and second is Palladino right now. And Reed Stewart continues to lead 1340 with Robert Cipriani in the second spot now. Second step on the podium for 1340.
That is an outstanding drive thus far for Thomas Palladino. Certainly found some pace and confidence in these conditions. And so the 913 car, one to look out for. But I have a feeling that we're going to see soon Nate Smith on the gearbox of that 913.
Have a car in turn 12.
And that's a huge moment for the 394. I believe that is David Albin. So Wisco Racing's David Albin coming into the Canada corner. Now, what's interesting is the rear wing of that car is actually laying down. I just wonder whether he'd had an earlier incident clip the rear wing. Sometimes the wing frame will get a small crease in it. And of course, with the high downforce that's generated around this fast circuit, all of a sudden a small crease becomes a big problem because that wing will just flip over or flip down and therefore no downforce. But there's certainly a lot of rain.
We very well may see a full course yellow coming out here shortly. They're looking for the leader at the moment.
But whether that happened, and we've got a spin at the top of the hill there, you could just see under the bridge a slow car getting back up to speed. So plenty of rain on this surface now.
Looks like we already also had some contact over in turn 4 as well. At the same time, the incident in 12 was occurring.
Yeah, and David Flint, the 57 in pit lane. Reese Everett also in pit lane. Safety car out on course, or sorry, a truck certainly out on course.
And likely responding to turn 12, so
there is the flags are out now, so it is a full course caution.
There's your leader at the stripe. Louis Schreiber has moved into the second spot. Steve Jenks dropping down to fourth. Robert Rossi right now.
It would be interesting to see a replay of that and see whether that wing did fold over first or whether it was just the contact with the wall, because I think that car did run along the wall, didn't it? You can see that one of the AMR signs is now laying down on the ground there.
It looks like the car may have swapped ends and kind of backed into the fence just underneath the caution light there. Still waiting for the balance of the field to come through here. We've only had the first three cars come through.
Yeah, and the 57 in pit lane, David Flint, rather, is looking around at his car, so certainly some drama for him. Just checking out possible damage on that car in pit lane, the 57.
So Clint Field is up to fourth around Steve Jenks. Klaus Nielsen and Palmer Miller. Those 7 cars have now come to the start-finish line. That's how big of a lead that they had. They had over a minute lead on Nate Smith in Pro 1500.
But Nate Smith doing a great job in Pro 1500. And what a drive, too, for Thomas Palladino, his teammate for Rhino Racing. That's 1-2 for them thus far in Pro 1500. And Robert Cipriani also starring again in this race, leading 1340 at the moment from Reed Stewart. So that's been a position change somewhere in all of that chaos and drama. The Corvette safety car trundling around. And certainly some of those access roads look pretty slick out there. The racetrack actually looks like it's in better condition.
All right, so looks like Robert Rossi had gotten around Louis Schreiber, and those two have swapped positions back as it was a pass under yellow. So it looks like they have already corrected themselves from what race control is stating.
So the order in the Platinum class at the moment, and that is John Field from Louis Schreiber, Robert Rossi, then Clint Field, Steve Jenks, who of course early on was leading this race, now down in 5th, Klaus Nielsen in 6th, Jim Booth, then Indy Al Miller, Judd Miller, Scott Wagner. Pro 1500. Palmer Miller from Nate Smith. And Kent Myers has popped up in there as well. I think that's wrong on my timing because he's not on our other screen. But Palladino, I think, in 3rd place. Perhaps a little confusion there with Race Monitor. If you ever want to check out what's happening live around the racetrack, you can always go to the Race Monitor app or Race Monitor. I think it's race-monitor.com. Look for the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America whenever there's a race, and you can follow along with live timing. And a big shout out to all of those folks watching from around the world. Lots of radical competitors tuning in to the YouTube channel to see their fellow drivers from North America take on Road America this weekend. And great to be able to bring you this vision. Another big shout out too to our iRacing community. The SR10 just launched for Season 3 on iRacing. And you can get behind the wheel, albeit virtually.
It's a fun car to drive.
I'm shocked by the response on the message boards. There's always been a following for Radicals, but it's outstanding, the response that we've received from the new SR10.
We are going to see the pace car bring the field up Chevrolet pit lane and bring the field in, likely to allow these teams to make the choice. And it is definitely starting to come down a little bit heavier here.
Yeah, so as we said, the red flag now comes out. All the cars are trundling into pit lane. They'll just form up calmly in the hot lane, and then the teams will have about 5 minutes to go and change tyres, get onto the wets, and then we should be able to resume racing.
All things considered, more than half of this race run under fairly dry conditions. It's still a little damp, but we avoided the majority of the heavy rainfall for the day today until the final about 12 minutes of race number 2. 25 and a half minutes have expired, and we have 9:20 remaining in the race time.
Yeah, so the clock should have stopped. I think it has indeed.
Race clock has stopped with the red flag.
But you'd just be kicking yourself, wouldn't you, if you were Steve Jenks? You were P1, then P2, and all of that was okay until somewhere along there the conditions just caught him out. It's going to be an amazing championship in Platinum this year, and for that matter, all of the classes. But I'm quite excited to see who comes out on top. Jenks is a fierce competitor, as is Indy Miller. Of course, we've mentioned John Field and his heroics. Louis Schreiber is certainly one that can win it. Robert Rossi showed that he's got strong pace as well. So there's so many drivers that can come out on top in the Platinum class. And that goes for the Pro 1500 class as well. You know, look at who the leaderboard is today. Palmer Miller 4th yesterday, at the pointy end today. And Nate Smith, ultra consistent there. Reed Stewart doing the job in Pro 1340.
The drive from Robert Cipriani in 1340 up to second now.
Just outstanding. And again, as we mentioned yesterday, he's a young man who thought he may not even take part this weekend, and I can see an absolutely dejected Reese Everard walking down behind pit lane, and just heartache for that young man after such an outstanding race yesterday.
Drove an incredible race yesterday, holding on for pressure after pressure for that 1500 battle.
Yeah, now the good thing for him, and one thing before he goes back and holds his head in his hands too much, is that he's still collecting points. So the way that the point structure works is if you start the race, you start to gain points. The main thing is to make the start of the race. And of course, the higher you finish, the more points you get. But the good news is that by having a DNF, you're not out of the points running. So whilst it's certainly going to affect him, it's going to even up things, I guess, with some of his other competitors. And luckily for him, at the moment, his main rival out of Barber anyway didn't fare so well in yesterday's race, and that was Gustavo Raffles, our reigning champion. So Raffles and Everard were actually tied on points going into yesterday's race. Raffles obviously finished a little bit down the order in third, and so whilst Everard won't get a win this time, it's not all over. His championship's not done. He can come back tomorrow swinging,
and he may not even realize that that Raffles had a problem as well.
Well, that's it. So again,
You know,
It's
Raffles
really good
is
news for Palmer Miller
right.
and Nate Smith. I think the points are going to get closer, not further away. Is my long-winded way of saying that?
Well, in this situation, because Reese Everard did complete uh, what appears to be, you know, maybe one lap. It really depends on if Raffles is back underway. You know, they're both a lap down here, but there's certainly a possibility that if Everard stays in position in front of Raffles, the championship with Miller narrows, but he'll maintain with Gustavo.
Correct, correct. Yeah, so Nate Smith sort of gets into the hunt. Miller will get into the hunt with the championship points. Of course, a long way to go. This is only round 2 of 6, and this is race 5 of. So there's a long way to go in this championship.
And it appears like there was contact for Robert Cipriani. He actually made contact with the wall and continued. So the fact that he's holding on to second place is pretty impressive after some contact with the wall.
Surviving the wall around here that's a lucky day if there ever was one.
Yeah, race control is going through right now and getting all of the collection of incidents during the initial burst of rain. So there's about 5 or 6 incidents that happened all at one time. So they're going back through and kind of just collecting who, if, and what.
It was definitely one of those cases, wasn't it, where we had this sort of light drizzle and then all of a sudden there seemed to be a dump of moisture on the racetrack, and that just threw chaos into this motor race. But
which, like you and I said at the outset here, we typically have one of these races of the 3 that ends up being a little bit chaotic, whether it's dry or wet. We've seen usually one of the races kind of just become just bizarre, like check off the bingo card bizarre. And it's kind of been that way today.
Well, we're certainly checking it off today, aren't we? So we've had a car breakdown on the
pace lap.
We've had spins. We've had amazing passes, but under yellow. Cars pulling off. Of course, the rain. Now a red flag so that everyone that's still in this motor race can change onto the wet tyres. You know, the other thing that I'm intrigued by is when I look down at someone like, the cars are in pit lane now, I would sort of be looking up and seeing who else isn't out there, because perhaps even if you could just turn a couple of laps in these conditions, you might bump up a couple of spaces. So, you know, if you could just trundle behind the safety car even for a couple more laps, you might find yourself going up through the leaderboard, because there's certainly some cars got stranded there right at the end. Good to see there's still... The fans here are amazing. Looking around, and there's rain coming down, and there's still plenty of fans out there in golf carts and ponchos and umbrellas, soaking in the atmosphere and soaking in the racing. We've had everything this week, from soaking up the sunshine to now a bit of rain today.
Sounds like we'll get a similar restart procedure here once everybody has bolted on the reins. Red flags have been withdrawn at the corner stations, so that would tell me that we're just about set to release the field.
And again, for the drivers, you know, this all changes now. Wet tyres. Obviously, we've had more rain falling on the racetrack. The conditions will be totally different. The feel will be totally different from what they last experienced. Of course, behind the safety car, you don't get a true read of what's going on. So the opening lap, once we go back under green, is going to be a new territory for every one of these drivers. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few position changes.
So resetting the field, John Field, Louis Schreiber, Robert Rossi, Clint Field, Steve Jenks, your top 5. Klaus Nielsen, Palmer Miller, Nate Smith, Reed Stewart, and Robert Cipriani right now are your top 10 overall. How we split that up is 3 classes. Platinum, it's Field, Schreiber, and Rossi. In 1500, it is Palmer Miller, Nate Smith, as well as, I believe, Kent Myers into a podium position here.
Wow.
In 11th spot overall.
Great news for Kent Myers, SS Racing. That makes up a little bit for Judd Miller's disastrous run here.
And then in 1340, we're looking at Reed Stewart leading the way with Robert Cipriani, holding the top 2 spots so far on the podium. And Mike D'Ambrosi in the 6th, currently third spot rather.
A local, if you will, from the Chicago area. Now, if you're wondering how to tell the difference between the 3 classes, there is colours on the rear wing, each side of the top element. You'll notice either Dayglow yellow indicating platinum, Dayglow red indicating Pro 1500, or Dayglow green indicating the Pro 1340 class. So you can often spot who is jockeying for position out there, whether it is indeed for class position or whether someone is playing a bit of a game of chess with an out-of-class car and trying to keep a buffer between them and their nearest rival.
So I'm not going to be a weatherman. I'm not going to play one on TV either. However, looking at the weather rock, it looks like the rain has subsided. Track is still going to be wet, but I'm not certain that the rain is continuing.
Well, good news there. The Hankook wets are pretty durable tyres. They're a fantastic wet weather tyre. And
realistically, I think we'd have maybe 2 to 3 laps of green flag after the clock resumes once the yellow flag is put back out. We've got 9:20 here. So realistically, if we get 1 pace lap, 2, maybe 3 green flag laps.
Yeah, it could be up to 4. But yeah, as you say, it's only going to be a handful, isn't it? So yeah, and the Hankook tyre, as I say, it will last. I mean, it will take a little bit of a while to get enough heat into it where it's going to start to deteriorate. Obviously, the blocks on the wet weather tyre move around a lot more, but it shouldn't be a problem. We've certainly burnt them up, if you will, on a drying track before. And a lot safer doing that than continuing on, obviously, on the dry tyres.
Still a little bit of a drizzle. It's not completely stopped. But then again, that's here on the front stretch. We could have heavier liquid sunshine over on the backside.
Yeah, and I can hear the cars rolling out of pit lane. So we're about to resume this race.
I believe we should get green next time by if we follow normal procedure here.
Yeah, it's a long track here, and so no reason the drivers can't feel things out, get a bit of heat in the tyres, get a bit of heat back in those brakes.
Going to see when they turn the clock back on. Right now it is still off. It's still showing red. So wondering when they will start the clock, if they'll give them the full lap and then resume the clock. And there it goes. Yellow flag now on timing and scoring. So the clock is now winding. We are at 9:15 and counting down.
So on the restart, look out for Palmer Miller in the 32 machine. I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden he's under a little bit of pressure from the 0-0 of Nate Smith. We mentioned Kent Myers right up there. And in the thick of that Pro 1500 battle, the 1340 drivers will be duking it out as well for the podium places. Reed Stewart, who is in the lead from Robert Cipriani. Palladino obviously just having a moment there just before we went to the red.
So we've got 2 cars in turn 3 that have spun and have at least one car that spun, another car that stopped, and a partial track blockage.
Disaster. And that looks like the gold and black car of Nate Smith. Surely not.
No engine noises and no contact. So the car just simply stopped to driver's left. The car that spun
could see one of
looks
those.
Like Nate Smith.
Yeah, could see one of those cars just refire there. You could see the flash of the rain light at the back of the car on and off, or off and on rather. And he got going again. But has he stopped again, or is this a replay? I think, or has he managed to stall it yet again? The safety truck now arriving on the scene. Just hard luck for Nate Smith, and of course there's other drivers that just want to get going again. You know, they're hoping, and now he has fired up that machine, although he's reversing. Doesn't want to get beached on the curb or into the grass.
Richard,
so that's good news.
Richard Durche, the 29, just retired to the paddock area through turn 5. He was the car that stopped driver's left, trying to establish who the car was that was down in turn 3, and that would be the car that's coming through our camera position now.
Yeah, it does indeed look like the gold and black car of Nate Smith. So what hard luck for Nate.
After a brilliant drive yesterday in race 1.
Brilliant drive yesterday and backing it up today. And of course, just getting a little bit too greedy, undoubtedly, with that right foot in these conditions.
Just waiting to see if we get lights out here.
It's so hard to tell from that shot. I think we do have lights out.
Lights have gone out.
So the safety car will come in this time by. What's left on the clock? Not a lot. 1:18. So we are going to get a
one-lap shootout.
A one-lap shootout. Now, yesterday you mentioned that was not something you wanted to see. You were worried about it.
And that was not something I wanted to see in the dry, let alone here in the wet when the money's on the line, right?
Right. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, get back to the side of the track. We're about to go green. We assume they're not going to come to the checker. We're about to go green.
Well, the clock has expired.
So what is going to come out here on the racetrack?
So the safety car has gone to pit lane. Leader at 15, which is the bridge.
Green, green, green. So we are going racing for at least one lap here. In wet conditions, the spray's coming up behind these machines. We'll see who can survive. One more lap at Road America. My money is on John Field for bringing this home.
Well, you'd certainly expect it with all of his experience.
There was a bit of a wiggle out wide, and I think that's that's Steve Jenks coming alongside there. And look
that's
at the
Klaus
spray.
Nielsen Clint Field. Jenks and Field are side by side.
Oh, Raffols is right behind the 32 of Palmer Miller. It looks like they're trundling out there. People trying to find the grip level. But this will be interesting. Down into turn 5 and another position change. Louis Schreiber is up. Surely Louis hasn't gone into the lead, has he?
That looks like it is Louis Schreiber in the lead. That is Field that is on the outside of 6.
Wow. And then Rossi behind him. So Rossi up to 3rd. Schreiber in the lead.
They are going to get a white flag, so they're going to give him 2 laps under green here. So the white flag is going to come out this time by.
I don't think that's going to calm them down, though.
Not at all.
They're not going to know that until they get around and see the white flag.
Field coming across the bow of Robert Rossi there.
So Rossi relegated to 3rd, but has a look to the inside around the carousel. That's not going to work in these conditions.
And you see some of the cars taking a traditional line through 8. That's going to be extremely slippery. Normally in mixed conditions, you see them kind of go offline for that very reason right there, as we've got a car around in turn 8.
That was Mike Anzaldi in the number 1. He got back on track pretty quickly, though. And Anzaldi not stalling it, getting the clutch in, managing to get back on track. But Robert Rossi looking pretty racy, and another one who looks pretty good is Steve Jenks. Of course, he's trying to clamber his way back up. He was leading this motor race early on, then relegated to second, back to fifth. And Jenks, looks like Nielsen got him on this this restart. So Jenks trying to get back into fifth place.
And the restart is potentially under review from an early start. But working the final lap.
Louis Schreiber with a gap. We'll go back and see who has picked up the 1500 class lead. Palmer Miller still in charge of that one. But will it be that case as they cross the line? It is. Palmer Miller in the 32 with a reasonable gap between him and Gustavo Raffles. Oh, we've got a car in the wall. Spin, spin, spin. And that car's
Jenks.
got nostrils. Yeah, it's Jenks. Oh. Group A Racing will be so sad to see that sight. Poor Steve Jenks.
Another car coming in hard.
So what has happened just before that crest? People getting out perhaps on the rumble strips and then coming across, and that was, dare I say, a pass under yellow.
So Schreiber now at 6.
Yeah, but it looks like Schreiber's fallen back, has he? Because that white car is Schreiber. So who's in the lead? Robert Rossi. And then I think it's John Field. Rossi in the blue and black car coming into shot. And then it's Field. And then Schreiber. So
I wonder if the grip just is so diminished in turn 5 that the leader coming in just simply hits moisture and swings wide. And all it takes is just that brief moment to lose a little bit of traction under braking and have two cars scoot behind you. These three have been close ever since the restart.
Well, this has been an awesome drive for Robert Rossi. He did really well in Skip Barber, in fact, won a championship years and years ago. Hasn't raced since. Got back into iRacing. Did a little bit of the virtual stuff. Then decided to try his hand again at the real world racing. Got himself an SR10 and has found himself in the lead of this race.
Is that possibly Clint Field in the second spot?
It could indeed be.
Because I believe we may have John Field is one of the cars in turn 2.
Right. Well, so Clint Field was moving back up through the field, and here we go around the final corner. Oh, and he runs a little bit wide, but retains it as they come up to the hill. This time they'll be greeted by the checkered flag, and Robert Rossi takes a win for Wisco Racing.
That is John Field in the second spot, so they may have called.
Oh, well, did we just get a flash of Clint Field too?
Yeah, they have not come across the line here. Top 3 have crossed the start-finish line, waiting on 4th here. So there's been a little bit of number confusion up in turn 2 because it sounds like they may have 2 or 3 cars up there.
Right, and
there is Clint Field.
Yeah, and then Klaus Nielsen in the 41. And it is Palmer Miller, who's done the job in Pro 1500 from Gustavo Raffles, who cruises over the start-finish line. And then it looks like the 99
of Kent Myers is at 7th.
Picking up a podium.
Second place. And how about Jack Yang picking up 3rd step on the podium in 1500? Cipriani leads 1340.
Yeah, and my mistake, of course, Gustavo Raffles came back out of the pits. So he was just circulating to get a few more points. My mistake, it's absolutely
so
Kent Myers, second place, behind Palmer Miller. Then it was Jack Yang in Pro 1500.
Cipriani, then Inzaldi, somehow 2 spins, manages to finish 2nd step on the podium. And D'Ambrosi will be the 3rd step on the podium in that 6 machine for 1340.
Well, you said it before. We'd had it all in that race, and we certainly have. That was a fair bit of action, a little bit too much. uh, if you ask the crews, because they're going to have a long night. It's lucky we've got all day tomorrow to prepare for race 3, because there's certainly some work to do down in the paddock. Of course, if you're around the racetrack and you just want to check out these machines, come down to the Leicester garages, just on the inside of the final corner. And you can check out these machines, talk to the drivers, talk to the crews, learn more about Radical Motorsport. Or you can check out the radicalmotorsport.com website. If you want to catch up on the action, perhaps work out what happened in some of these early laps, go ahead and check out the YouTube page, Radical Motorsport. You can rewatch this race. But that was certainly an amazing last lap, last couple of laps in trying conditions. And hats off to all the competitors that made it home safely. Commiserations for those guys that didn't. But we'll certainly have to go down and celebrate the victors in this one down at the podium.
Yeah, a couple of hard impacts over in turn 2. Certainly wish them the best in rebuild for tomorrow. A couple of cars over on the driver's right in turn 2, just in front of the flag station near the Aaron's Tunnel. But that is the conclusion of Radical Cup on this Saturday. Hopefully it was a satisfying Saturday for you race fans out there. And we get to do it again for the 3rd time with the Blue Marble Radical Cup coming up tomorrow afternoon following the conclusion of the Sanzio Grand Prix. Radical Cup will start around 2:15 tomorrow afternoon, followed by Vintage Indy Registry. So our day starts out tomorrow with the first 20 minutes of our day from 8 to 8:20. Some lucky folks will get some track rides. And then the Indy Pro 2000 race number 2, Rob Howden on the call at 8:30 Central Time tomorrow. Indy Lights at 9:35, followed by our opening ceremonies around 11 o'clock. And then we get racing just before noon with the Sanzio Grand Prix of Road America presented by AMR. And then we'll follow up with the Radical Cup and Vintage Indy today, tomorrow afternoon. That is our race day Sunday for tomorrow. We're going to send Tom Drewer down to Victory Lane. We'll celebrate the podium from Victory Lane. So with the mixed conditions on the racetrack, we are continuing to wait and see if we will have Vintage Indy Registry. And from the looks of things, it does appear that we may have a few cars